Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the first BC Fulbright panel. My name is Brianna Stonick and I'm a senior majoring in international studies with a concentration in political and developing economies. I also have a self-directed minor in communication studies, and I am one of the 6 peer advisors for the international studies department this year. I myself am applying for a Fulbright in Kenya as an English teaching application for this cycle. So as you guys know, there are a ton of panels online already for the Fulbright through the Fulbright website that other people have put on, but I was really interested in hearing what you guys had to say. Something about hearing from past BC winners is just really appealing to me because you guys went through BC, you slept in these dorms, you ate at Lower, and all of that makes it seem a little bit less daunting and more within my grasp, so as well as other applicants. So I just wanted to also help build up the existing Fulbright community at BC, because if there's anyone that I have something in common with, it's the person that wants to get out of America. Your waiting room. Okay, for anyone on the call who doesn't already know what the Fulbright is, the Fulbright is a US student program. It's the largest exchange program, and it offers opportunities for students and young professionals alike to undertake international graduate study, advanced research grant, university teaching, and primary and secondary school teaching as well. The program also awards approximately 2,000 grants annually in all fields of study and operates in more than 140 countries worldwide. So here with us today, we have a number of Fulbright winners. So if you guys could all take turns introducing yourself to the students on this call, that would be great. We don't have time to introduce all of the applicants, but I especially want to get those panelists in. So if just periodically, or if you want to use the hand raise feature, we can, but I'm comfortable just, unmute yourself. Well, we'll have a few stutters, but I'm comfortable, we'll make it through. Just introduce yourself, say your name, where you graduated, what you studied, what host country you went to, and whether or not you were a research or an ETA or another type of grant. And also, if you can remember all that, feel free to include a fun fact as well. So whoever wants to get started can.
I can give it a shot. So hi everyone, my name is Bjorn. I graduated actually last year in 2020, so I'm not too far off from the process than you all. I studied international studies and I had a concentration in cooperation and conflict. And a fun fact about me, I'm from Kansas, so I have been hit by lightning in a car before. So that's my claim to fame.
I can jump in next. Thanks, Bjorn. My name is Maria Ireland. I graduated from BC in 2015, so 5 years ago. I graduated with a degree in international studies, and I had a history minor. And I did my Fulbright not right after I graduated. I actually did it like 2 years after, so 17, 18 year. And I was an ETA in Italy. And I guess, I don't know, a fun fact, I have a scar that's in the shape of a lightning bolt like Harry Potter. So that's kind of fun. Not fun, but interesting.
I can go. I don't know. Is anybody else talking? All right. I might be the ancient one unless somebody wants to beat me, but I graduated 2012 and I double majored in international studies with a political science concentration. So it's good to see that the major has expanded so much because I haven't even heard of these things that y'all are talking about. And double major with German. And then I had a minor in the Faith, Peace, and Justice program. I don't even know if that's still there. And my Fulbright was an ETA in Germany. And so I did that the 2012-2013 school year. I think there were like maybe 4 of us my year. Fun fact. Fun fact that might give you guys like an idea of where you can go with your Fulbright is that after 5 years of teaching in public school in Nashville, I just started a PhD program at NYU. It's all remote, so I'm still in Nashville, but the Fulbright's like a good way to open doors to go to other things. So
I'll go, Natasha.
Oh, Margaret, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to follow Sabrina because I was also an English teaching assistant in Germany. My name is Margaret. I was also an international studies major with a minor in German, so look forward to Natasha changing the major game because we're all international studies. And what else was I supposed to say? My fun fact, I guess, can be that Natasha was one of my best friends at BC, so I roped her into joining this. And I also, after returning from my Fulbright, worked on the Fulbright Foreign Student Program. So that doesn't relate to you guys, but if you didn't know, it is an exchange. So foreigners do come to the US, which is a whole nother program and process.
All right, I'll go ahead. I'm Natasha. I graduated in 2017. I majored in geology and physics. So I studied earthquakes, and I was a research Fulbright to Armenia. So a bit of a distinction from the other ones. Oh, I see a question. I think that's to Margaret. My fun fact was that Margaret and I were roommates. So she kind of took my fact. But yeah, so I think most of you guys might be ETAs, but if there's any research questions or whatever, I can field them.
I can go next. My name is Carrie. I also graduated in 2017. I was an ETA in Russia, and I studied while at BC international studies, and I concentrated in Eastern Europe in Russian language, and I had a minor in philosophy. And I guess my interesting fact to bounce off of Margaret's is that I wrote Jam into this. So you're welcome, Jam.
Thanks, Carrie. So I'm Jam. I graduated in 2017 with Carrie and Natasha. I did my ETA in Indonesia, studied finance and analytics here, if I said that. And my fun fact is I learned archery with the Indonesian military while I was on my Fulbright.
That's so neat. I have yet to come up with a fun fact, so hopefully I can do it in this span. But my name is Eleanor Vorys, and I was class of 2016, so I think I'm sandwiched in between. But I also fall in the international studies major category, and I think my concentration was ethics and social justice. But fear not, if you are not an international studies major, I did my Fulbright in Malaysia. I was an ETA, and when I got there, my cohort was really big. Malaysia, I think, is one of the largest programs that you can apply to, and there were majors from everywhere, you know, engineers, people coming from pre-med, people coming from the business school. So I think it just might be, you know, international studies at BC that hears of it maybe. So pass the word along, I guess. But I guess a fun fact of mine is that I've had over like 25 cats in my lifetime because we foster them. So that's pretty wild.
Okay, if there's anyone else, feel free to cut me off, but if not, I'm ready to move into the questions if you are. So again, if everyone could just keep their mics off unless someone else is speaking. You guys are doing so well at that, but I do have a script, so that's why I'm saying that. And if I ask a question that you just don't want to answer today, that's perfectly okay, no pressure. I won't be calling on anyone specifically. It's really up to you to volunteer yourself. Okay, so the first question, I bet you can all guess. Can you please describe your experience, why you chose your host country, your grant type, and the most rewarding part of your experience? And in the interest of time, if we could keep it answers to below 4 minutes, just so that as many people, we have a lot of panelists. We definitely outweigh the applicants. So if everyone can just keep their answer to a little bit under 4 minutes, that would be great.
Could I also just ask if maybe the attendees could put in the chat like what they're applying to or what country they're interested in, because that could maybe help us calibrate our answers.
Yeah, that would be great if everyone wants to go ahead and do that.
By that, I just mean the people who are applying, because we heard from the.
All right, so if someone wants to kick off just why you chose your host country, the type of grant that you did. I know most of you guys did ETA, so no need to repeat, except for that research, and the type, and what was the most rewarding part of your experience.
I can jump in and start. So I did an ETA to Italy, and I did it, as I said, 2 years after I graduated from BC. So I actually spent those 2 years working in Jerusalem with an NGO, and I was working actually on teacher training programs. And like I've always had a passion and interest in international exchange and education. So those years I felt like I was working with a lot of teachers, and I wanted to try out teaching, you know, on my own and see if that was kind of the path I wanted to go into. And in Italy, at least, you are a teaching assistant, so you work with full-time teachers, and you you all work in high schools in the south of Italy. So I knew like I'd have some guidance on teaching and be able to like put into practice a lot of the things that I had learned from my job in Jerusalem. And it was a great way to do that without like committing to go for a master's of ed and, you know, maybe then figuring out I didn't want to teach later on. And I'm Italian American, and I actually lived with Italians in Jerusalem and had studied in Parma. So it just like made a lot of sense to go back to Italy. So it was like personal interest, most of all, that brought me back there, and wanting to become fluent in the language. Yeah, that's just a little from me.
I can take this too. So I applied to Russia because I was actually thinking at the time of getting a PhD in that area. After, I'm actually not sure, but something you should know, at least if you're going to Russia, which doesn't seem like anyone is it's not vacation, the Fulbright. It's hard at times, and they definitely want you to be able to deal with that. But I'm actually not pursuing a PhD. I'm getting a JD now. But it was a great experience, even if, you know, it helped tailor my path going forward and, you know, narrowed my focus. So that's why I applied.
Kind of speaking about like the teaching stuff, because I think as international studies majors, like I'm going to assume that most of y'all like don't really know what you want to do. Like you want to do something internationally, but you're not like, this is like business, nursing, Lynch, like they all have tracks. And I know that when I was in IS, like I was like, I have no idea, like applied to TFA, applied to Peace Corps, like everyone did JVC. And so the Fulbright was a surprise, like, because you don't expect to get it. And for me doing an ETA, I was in Germany. So if you guys know anything about the German ones, like Professor Ressler just puts them through. But for me, it kind of gave me a year doing an English teaching assistantship to be like, what do I want to do? Because I had no idea. So it kind of gives you this year where you get to work abroad, you get the prestigious Fulbright. And I personally fell in love with teaching. So then I went and pursued a master's in education. But, you know, the girl that I did my year with, she was IS as well. And she ended up going to med school. She realized she wanted to be a doctor. So I say with the ETA, you get a little liberty in like realizing, like taking a year to figure out what you want to do while also like doing a Fulbright.
I can jump in. To echo what people have already said, I think the most rewarding thing is just you get to spend this significant amount of time in a country you really love, that you're invested in, maybe you've been to before or not. For me, I had done an internship in Armenia the summer before I applied. So I wanted to return, and I had contacts and a sense of purpose. But also, it's a really good year to sort of figure out what you want to do. So I was in geophysics in school, but I didn't know, do I want to go into academics? Do I want to try to do something else? So you're fully occupied with this great program, but you're completely free, especially in the research grant. I know ETA is a little more structured based on a school or teachers, but with research, it's almost funny that there's no one that checks in with you. You could do anything, like, so, but at the same time, you know, you have your sense of purpose and your 9 or 10 months. So for me, that helped me figure out I did like research and I wanted to go into a PhD program. So that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, and I'll follow that. I think the reason I applied was because I knew I loved teaching, and that had always been my mentoring experiences in the past and volunteer experiences. But I think being an international studies major, there's just something so rewarding about living in another country where you get to become familiar with a community or like a specific, a different perspective than you probably have in Massachusetts or you've had wherever your hometown might be. And I think it's really important that you get to be a part of the community as someone who's actually living there rather than someone who's visiting or traveling, and looking at yourself as like, how do I navigate this? And that kind of empathy and perspective and kind of awareness of who you are in a different context can be really helpful as you move forward through life, just getting to know yourself better. And then lastly, I would just point out that that the Malaysia program was important to me because the commission was really closely working with the Malaysian government. So the fact that the Malaysian host country was telling us what to do rather than us coming in and having an idea of like, oh, I'm just gonna volunteer. You know, it's not that, and I would encourage you all to look at it with a different lens, so that you really do, you have your eyes and your ears open rather than, you know, the Fulbright loves to say like, we're going to be ambassadors for our country. And yes, that will be a title on your kind of, on yourself when you're there. But I think you can take it and spin it in a little bit of a different way to make it your own, and kind of work with your community or the community that you're placed in, or the country government that you have connections with. And they really provide you significant connections to the government to be able to talk with people who you might never get the chance to speak with otherwise.
I want to follow up on what Sabrina said about having no direction and sort of seeing Fulbright as an opportunity to take a year to figure that out. But I want to emphasize to you applicants that that's a totally legitimate reason, and a bunch of us are in that boat, but don't say that as your reason. Like, a general desire for travel and exploration is not a good reason to apply. So that can be, and a German professor told this to me straight up, like, that can be the reason in your head, that's totally fine, but that should not be the reason in your essay. I'm sure we'll talk more about essays specifically. Then to add to what Natasha said, even in ETA, it's going to depend on your host country, but in Germany, we were only expected to teach 12 hours a week, which is a very small amount of time. I luckily had great supervising teachers, so I ended up teaching more like 15, sometimes 20 hours a week, which I was not technically supposed to do. But you have a lot of time that's unstructured and that you need to build, so you can make it whatever you want. You could make it your time to apply to grad school. You can make it meeting as many people as possible. You can take classes at the local university, but you really have to take ownership of your freedom, because I almost feel like at the beginning, so much freedom compared to your BC time is like, whoa, what am I supposed to do with my time? I don't know anybody. And it's kind of scary. So you know, take advantage to just like get to know yourself in that year, because you'll probably never have that much personal time again.
Thank you for that, Margaret. So we're going to move on to the next question. I know not everyone got the chance to answer, but feel free to bring in anything you want into your answer to the next question. So we're going to talk about challenges you faced. Be sure to focus on authenticity here. You know, I know it's not going to be easy or perfect or, you know, the best thing in the world ever. Like, there's going to be some times where it's really hard and difficult. So if you could just speak to those challenges so that maybe we have an easier time navigating them, or at least aren't terribly surprised when they happen, that would be great. So whoever wants to kick it off.
Since Margaret just spoke, my experience as an ETA in Russia, I had the opposite experience. They scheduled me pretty much working, 50 hours a week as a teacher, which I felt not supported enough to be doing. So a challenge was figuring out the dynamics of the department that I was in and communicating only in Russian, which I learned just starting as a freshman, and standing up for myself, but also being aware of the fact that they weren't doing it out of any malice, but they viewed it as a resource for their students, who were university students. So just navigating that was, hard. And when I did speak up, everything was fine. But being aware that that might be an issue and knowing how to handle it was a difficulty that I was not anticipating.
I think another challenge is you only have a year, not even. It's usually 10 months. So the fact that you're being asked to wear many different hats, show up at different events, host different camps. I don't know if other programs did this, but you have to do more than just teaching. If you're an ETA, and I'm sure research, you have other obligations, but then you also have your own personal goals. You also want to get to know people who are living around you. You might have people in your cohort you want to get to know. So you've got all of these goals and objectives, and to only have 10 months to do that, I would say, if you get the opportunity, hit the ground running, because it is too short.
So I already said basically the opposite of Carrie's experience in Germany, and my colleagues, other ETAs, told me this too. It was the challenge of filling our time, and as an ETA as well, I think your experience is really shaped by your teacher, your mentor teacher, your supervisor. So mine was great. So my teaching experience was really good, but others had teachers who didn't know how to use them, didn't want to use them because they felt threatened, any number of things. And so you don't know what you're going to face necessarily at school. So I think you do, like Carrie said, really need to stick up for yourself, because the circumstances aren't always going to be ideal. And I know there's also a resource for all Fulbright students called Fulbright Assist, which is basically, I mean, you get health insurance through the program, but I utilize the mental health counseling, which is free over the phone with native English speakers. So that's available to all Fulbrighters anywhere at any time. So that's just something to have in the back of your mind.
I think Germany is a little bit of a different category, because Germany itself has I think we have 130 ETAs. And I know that everybody I knew in Germany had a completely different experience. But I think for ETAs, you really do make it your own. I echo that. I had too much time. You go from literally having a jam-packed schedule for 4 years, and then you're like, wow, what do I do? And so Margaret talked about some of the things that you can do, but Germany is definitely a special bubble. But challenges for sure was I mean, I feel like I'm saying the same thing, but I think for the ETAs, just like understand that each country is like super different, because as Eleanor's saying, she's like, hey, we were totally packed with things that we had to do, but Margaret and I were Germany and we're like, we had to find things to do. And so like, you're going to get placed in your country, but somewhere completely random. Like you might be in the tiniest rural place, or you might be in Germany, you might be in Berlin. So like, it's completely random. So that's something that you have to be ready for, is that you accept it and then you get your placement. And so you have to be ready to maybe be in a town of like 50 people and a tiny school, or you're in like a 5 million person city. So like, that's one of the challenges that a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, and to that end, I can speak to that a little bit. I was in Indonesia in a rural village of 50 people, and I commuted an hour and a half every day to get to the city, to get to Wi-Fi and like food. So I'd say a tactical challenge was A, getting food, but B, was being the small village, you've got this strong sense of isolation and loneliness because no one speaks English, you're a foreigner coming in, and you've really got to come to grips with how to structure your time. I realized once I started structuring my time better, like for this hour I'll do this, the next 2 hours this, that's what really helped. And eventually I got to do a lot of really cool things, even outside of teaching. I would teach like 10 hours a week, but I ended up consulting for local businesses like for like 8 months, which is really cool. But I'd say my experience was not how everyone in Indonesia kind of got set up. I had friends who were, in big cities in Jakarta, in a hotel above a bar. So it's so different where you can be. So I think just going in with knowing that you might get in different scenarios is helpful. I personally liked it, and ended up being, I think more enriching. But it was definitely a tougher learning curve.
I just want to quickly emphasize that definitely a village is its own circumstance, but you can be really isolated in a big city. And it can be really hard to make friends in a foreign country if you go there by yourself. You're working in a second language that maybe you're learning or you barely know, but you don't have these organic structures of a social setting like a university. It's so different from BC, not just the jam-packed time schedule has gone away, but you don't walk up to someone on the street and say, hey, let's get lunch, let's be friends. So unless you can be really, really deliberate about creating social structures, especially in a research position. Like for me, I was in an Earth Sciences Institute, and all of my colleagues were between the ages of 45 and 70. So I definitely enjoyed their company, but it's not like you make this friend and you're hanging out at night or something. So I felt that palpably, and I had to try maybe to visit a university, find out their events, and just go there and say, hey, I'm an exchange student or fellow. Like, what's your group about? But you have to be proactive about it, because even in the middle of a capital city, you can feel alone.
Thanks, Natasha. That's a great thing to point out, and actually something that does scare me a little, like with the idea of going to like a rural village, or like I said, anywhere. It can be difficult when you're in such a different culture. So we only have about 10 minutes left before I'm going to open up the floor for questions. So I realized that for questions from students. So I realized that I did make too many questions. My next question was going to be about challenges in the classroom, but I feel like what you guys have answered for challenges in general have already really reflected that. So I'm going to X that one. And in this next question, if you want to return to challenges, that's totally fine. I just really appreciate you guys speaking, and this has already been so helpful for me. So my next comment is, in the light of COVID, this year's application is expected to be especially difficult. Additionally, everyone applying is hanging in the uncertainty of, even if they were to win, whether the world will have recovered by the time they're expected to go abroad. So that's a challenge in and of itself, but it's also just really challenging to apply for a Fulbright. Can anyone just speak to things that they wish they knew during their Fulbright application process or before they undertook their Fulbright? So if you were me right now, a senior applying, what did you wish you knew?
Margaret said this, and like I knew this when I applied, but that's because Professor Resler like just has this down to a science. But I mean, to share it with the rest of you all is that when you're writing your essays, like tell them like it's one of those essays where you're literally BSing it. Like I know that we don't want to do that, but it's like you have to make it seem like, you know, and it's true, like you do want to do this stuff, but you have to make it seem like you were born to go teach English in X country, and like your time at BC has led you to this exact moment. Like you have to really exaggerate it and make it like so flowery. Like I almost threw up in my essay. I was like, this is awful. It's so over the top. And then I got it. And you have to make yourself stick out. So like, you know, find a way that you stick out. You all are international studies majors at Boston College. So make yourself stick out. And then so that's in the personal essay, find some crazy cool anecdote. And in the statement of purpose, I'm assuming it's still the 2 essays. And in the statement of purpose, like you have to literally sell the Fulbright Commission, like why you individually are the one person that is like the destiny of the ETA or the research, like make it over the top. So.
Yeah, I can jump into that too. Natasha, I think you said earlier, like you did a research grant and they kind of never check up on what you're doing after. And I think the same is true for like anything you write in your essay. So I know for the ETA applicants, I mean, you're just applying to teach there, but they want you to talk about like ways to engage with the community and kind of plans you have for those things. And so I reread my essays this afternoon, and it was just kind of comical to like look back and read. And I ended up doing a lot of the things that I said I wanted to do, but also exactly what you were just saying, Sabrina, you need to be like very specific and really sell like why you at this time in this particular country doing this research or teaching, and like really sell it, and no one's gonna really, you know, ask you about it later, like what you said you wanted to do 5 years down the road or whatever. Like how will the Fulbright help you get there? Nobody's gonna check up. So just like telling a really compelling story, I think, to sell you in this specific country and position makes a big difference. And then the other thing I would say I wish I knew before is once you submit internally at BC, there's like a panel of professors that do an interview with you. And I remember going in and I was like, I don't really know what they're going to ask me. So we talked, of course, about my application and whatnot, but I think to prepare for that, it's really helpful to like read up on what's going on in the country you're applying to and know like what are some of the hot topics going on there, like politically or culturally or socially, or issues that the country's dealing with, you know, domestically or, you know, in their foreign affairs. That will be helpful because the professors, I think, tend to ask you stuff like that, or yeah, like questions about being an ambassador for the US, like what would you say if someone came up to you on the street and started asking you about the US election, or, you know, just like kind of prepare yourself to answer these questions. And also, since I was applying to Italy, I knew I had to do like a separate language evaluation, but I wasn't prepared really for the professors on the panel to start speaking to me in Italian. And at some point they did. And I was like, whoa, I was not prepared for this. And I got through and it was fine. But just that's another helpful thing to know if any of you are applying to go to countries where the language isn't English. That will be just good things to know before. Check up on what's going on there, current events wise, be prepared to answer some questions in the language.
I think to kind of jump off that and to continue to demystify the interview a little bit, I know that's something I had a lot of anxiety about last year as well. A little bit of a pro tip about the interview. So the interview itself seems daunting because I thought it was a matter of BC would or would not allow me to continue applying for Fulbright. The reason for the interview, and they kind of try to not talk about this too much, but the reason for the interview is the school itself has to write a recommendation letter on your behalf to recommend you. And so basically what these professors are trying to do is they are trying to test you, and they do ask challenging questions. So I definitely agree with Maria. She's so right. Know about your country, know about the education system in the country if you're going to be an ETA as well. But also know that at the end of the day, the panelists are trying to help you. So they're not going to be completely savage to you. They're just trying to ask challenging questions. So if you do answer them, they can honestly put on your recommendation that you were just there for it and you were above and beyond. And I think that's a big reason that BC successfully gets a lot of Fulbrights every year, is because they're very serious compared to a lot of other schools about making sure that they're supporting their students. And they'll also be there to assist you with your essays as well. So at the end of your interview, at least in my experience, they sat down, they asked me questions about my essays, and then they gave me recommendations of little things to tweak. And I would definitely take that advice to heart because they know exactly what they're looking for. As far as the uncertainty goes, I can speak to that a little bit because this year Fulbright has been delayed until January. Just know that when you're waiting to find out about your application, you might not hear back until June at the latest. I heard at the very end of May. Don't panic. It doesn't mean you did or did not get it. If you're anything like me, I spent a lot of time on forums trying to find out when I'm going to find out who gets in and all these things. Don't worry about that. To be honest, it's a little bit on the random side, and to some extent, you just kind of gotta let things be up in the air and just kind of sit in the uncertainty for a little while and be comfortable with that.
Yeah, and to jump off that, if you don't already know this, the application goes through actually 2 different hands. So the timeline, first of all, if you're a program that doesn't start until January, so Malaysia, because the school year is from January to December, not the September to June that we're used to, then you won't be starting your program until January. So you are going to be one of the last programs to hear about it because they're trying to see everyone else's application. So for people that are going to India, you get on your flight in June. So that naturally they're going to announce India first. So know that your application goes to BC first. They do the interview, they add a recommendation. You're allowed to actually revise your application before you resubmit it. So you send it to BC, you interview, you resubmit it, and then it goes to IIE, which is the international, or at least this is 2016, so grain of salt. But it goes to IIE, they read it, they review it. So imagine like bureaucrats in DC reading, well, actually, Margaret, maybe you have some insight on this, but they're reading it and they're going to be looking at how are you going to represent the United States. Then the application goes to your host country readers. So that depends on who your program is. In Malaysia, it actually goes to Malaysia. For other countries, if you have a commission there, it will go to your commission. If you're a country like Argentina or India and you don't have a commission, then it's going to go someplace else in DC, but it's going to go to like your host country readers. And that's when they want to see your understanding of, one, the country context or your passion of the country. Like, why did you choose that country specifically? You could have chosen anywhere in the world. And also, what are you going to bring to the program? So I think those are 2 really important things to show the host country. And that's the second stage. So if you're a semifinalist, you get passed by the DC and they want to see like, oh, you're going to represent, for me, it was like Midwest America, female athlete, that kind of thing in an Islamic country. Like I had done some Islamic classes in BC. So, so do show how you can represent the US to get past that stage, and then make sure that you are very communicative of how passionate you are about the country that you chose and why and what's led you to that country, and then what you as a person have already succeeded, what have you already overcome, like how can you bring what you have done to that assignment, whether it's research or teaching. That was long-winded, apologies.
No, thank you so much. That was great. And I hate to cut everyone off early. This really could be like a 2.5-hour seminar, but I really want to be, or panel, but I want to be respectful of your time. I'm willing to stay overtime, but not everyone has that same commitment. So I do want to open up the floor for questions, however long they go on, and whoever wants to stay is welcome, but you are all Perfectly acceptable, and no social shame to drop off at 9 o'clock. That is when this ends. But yeah, I myself could ask 20 minutes worth of questions. So to not do that, I'm going to open up the floor to everyone else first. Okay, I'll start. I was excited about this. I knew this would happen. So I had a few prepared. All right, easy one. Should I say I will or if I, and other future tense versus hypothetical?
I reread mine and I say I will. I am. It's mostly present tense. And I think I might have done that because of word count. So not really sure.
Yeah, exactly. Would is more than will.
I think will is fine. It feels weird, but that's all the advice I heard, and what I wrote was I will.
I second that, and I just want to add a little to what Eleanor said. You're right about the trajectory of the application. You'll turn it in both stages. You'll hear in January whether you're a semi-finalist, which means you've passed the IIE, Institute of International Education review, and you're being sent to the host country contacts. So you're only getting sent to the host country if you go beyond the first round. And then once you get your final notification, which could, as previously said, be anywhere between April or June or later, you'll be told that you're a finalist, an alternate, or I don't know what it is when you're not chosen. I guess you just stay a semi-finalist. So you can still brag if you're a semi-finalist. I was an alternate, so if anyone has questions about that, that means that you aren't a principal candidate and you're not going to go to the country unless someone who got a finalist offer turns it down, which ended up happening, so I did go. Or you're just a finalist and then you don't have to worry about it. You just accept the offer or reject it.
Any other questions, you guys?
I have a question. I'll go. So I'm actually a junior, so this is pretty premature and I won't be applying until next year. And so I'm torn at the moment between ETA or research. And I heard a lot from people who had done like the ETA route. But in terms of research, how did you come to your research topic? And was it influenced by anything at BC, or what are they looking for?
I don't know if anyone else was research on here, but it echoes a lot of what other people have said. You have to make yourself really, really specific. You need to pose a research question that is nearly vital to both countries, both the US and, for me, Armenia. And so that's really hard. You can't just come up with it. You have to be working in a context that's very localized, that's on a sort of one-person scale, but also puts you in interaction with people in your host country. So what really helped me was that I had an internship the summer before in Armenia, where I worked in geophysics. And I just asked them, I started saying, I want to return, I'm interested. I know there's a lot of problems with earthquakes here, but you can't say, I want to go there and work on earthquakes. So they showed me what they're working on. We had some discussions, and there ended up being this international project between all of the Caucasus countries to do a large-scale geophysical survey. And why that was really important is because those countries have pretty tough international relations. There's a war between them. There's the Armenian genocide, which Turkey committed but hasn't acknowledged. There's just general Russia, Iran. So to have this sort of broad-scale project be feasible is very moving and is timely. It's of the moment. So it's something you can sort of capture. You can say, this is happening. It needs to be looked at from a different perspective. It needs to have X, Y, Z. But the main thing I would warn against is being general. So you really have to even like it might take months to figure out a compelling research project. But once you have it, I think that's sort of what distinguishes your application. I think just talking to the people in the country, if you can make contacts, which sounds scary, but I just cold emailed people. Like I looked up the Geophysics Institute and I just emailed the head. I said, I'm a student at this, I'm interested in working for free. Like, you know, people will respond, some won't, but don't feel like you already need to have contacts to make those contacts.
Yeah, I mean, I did an ETA, but I got to know a lot of the researchers in Italy pretty well. So I can just like jump in with a couple examples. I think there were, 14 researchers in Italy the year I was there. A lot of them were doing like PhD dissertation research. So I know that probably wouldn't be your case, but one of them was in Palermo. I was also in Sicily, and she was like researching how the opera theater in Palermo can reach out to young people. So she just was like, I really like opera, I speak Italian, like I want to, you know, figure out how we engage young people. So she wrote to a bunch of different theaters in Italy and made good contacts in Palermo, and just kind of like happened. But I also knew people who had also just graduated from college and were like into biochemistry and had made contacts with like labs in Rome and actually ended up working at the labs like for free. So it's just like a lot of different projects. But yeah, what Natasha said, making the connections so you have a compelling like partner on the ground there, and being able to be really specific, I think is what sets projects apart from others. Like the commission reading your application wants to know that you have what you need to actually do your project. So if it's kind of like something that's just an idea and hasn't really been teased out in details, or you don't have a strong partnership, I think it's harder for them to like commit to giving you the grant, because they would worry that, oh, maybe she won't even be able to do it, and what a shame. So I think that's something to think about when you're, and I read Sabrina's comment also in the chat, and it's also definitely a numbers game. So you can find all that info on the Fulbright website. And so that's part of it too. It's like, do I really want this Fulbright experience in this country? Or, you know, do I want to spend time teaching? Do I want to do a project? And trying to make the right decision for you, and also what's going to be a compelling story for your application. And on that, I would say, I know BC has a lot of contacts in Jordan, like with their study abroad programs and stuff. So, you know, if you start researching and things like that, it might also be helpful to reach out to some of the people at BC who kind of like organize the programs in Jordan and see if there's people they could connect you to. That's all for me on that.
Thank you.
I have one question. I was gonna say or ask, like I wanted to like give specific examples of like why a certain project or idea would be useful. Like I'm applying for the ETA in Italy, so maybe you could speak more of this, Maria. But I want to say like financial literacy is not like the strongest thing. Like there's like socio-economic problems in southern Italy. Also, I didn't want to like say anything negative about the country, but for example, the nation's like 48th or something worldwide in financial literacy, and the worst of like the G8. But I don't want to like, I don't know. Does it ever make sense to give like details that aren't like maybe the most like trying to say that they like why what I'm trying to do would be more needed, if that made any sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think a lot of you can probably speak to this as well. But I wrote a lot about like in my application, because I was coming from the conflict zone. So I kind of wrote about Italy dealing with the migrant crisis and how that was affecting politically and socially kind of Italian life and culture, and wanting to get involved in like second response efforts there. So, and interestingly, like in my conversation with the BC professors on the panel, we talked about that a little bit, and like being very diplomatic, of course, but also like not trying to whitewash the problems. So I think, and when the Italian Commission only sends people to Southern Italy, like they partner, like you said, Eleanor, in Malaysia, Italy partners with the Ministry of Education, the Italian Fulbright Commission, and the Ministry of Education is actually the one who decides like which schools you go to. So they chose the South for a reason, like there is more need there. And it's not like they're going to read your essay and say, oh, darn. So I think it's like a fine line of saying it diplomatically, but also that's a very compelling reason to want to go there. And you could bring, I don't know what your major is or what you're doing at BC, but I'm sure you have experience in this. And a passion for it. And I think, you know, like being diplomatic about it, but also bringing a unique perspective to, like, if you want to do the ETA, but you also have this passion. I think maybe he's not here anymore, Jam, who said he was in Indonesia, but also ended up like consulting for a business. I feel like that's a unique story for an ETA to come in with these skills and want to also get involved in those kind of things. So, I mean, you don't want to like paint Italy in a terrible light, because of course Italians are going to read your application, but kind of spinning it in a diplomatic way of like your skills and things you want to learn there and contribute, I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't know what the rest of you guys who have won grants like think about this fine line between, you know, telling it like it is, but also being like, this country is so great, I want to go.
I don't know if I can respond to the last part of that, but just a note on a strategic standpoint. If you're worried about fitting those concerns as an ETA applicant in your statement of grant purpose, there's these two annoying tiny little essays that I didn't even look at until the last night. And that's the host country engagement portion. And if you really want to elaborate on how you want to work on things that you're passionate about outside of the classroom, that's definitely the space to fill. So mentioning it in your grant purpose statement is important, but I wouldn't spend too much time there elaborating on it unless that's really integral to you. I would really put that in the host country engagement section.
And touching on that application portion, I don't know if it's changed, but in our experience, the very first page has 3 short essays, and I think the character limit is just egregious. Like, I think I have 4 sentences in each.
850 characters.
Okay, yeah.
And then 1,750.
Spend as much time on those as you do on your each essay, because they are so important. They are what they see first. So if they don't like what you've said there, they're not even going to get to your essay. So make every word count and make it be like broad enough that they understand who you are, but specific enough that they actually get an idea of you. But those are super important. Don't underestimate them.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak too much, but I just thought of something else is like we talked a lot about being specific. So just back to your specific example, Charles, like if you know of any institutions or nonprofits kind of working in financial inclusion in Italy that you could mention as like something that you would love to research more while you're there or volunteer with, like I think those details really also make a difference and tie it to something tangible and specific as well. So you're not just kind of like talking about a problem in general. So that's just another comment.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you could speak a little more about the interview process, because I think that's, well, I thought it was helpful what you said before about the language being part of the interview and like the situational questions that they were going to ask. But I was wondering if you had any other suggestions for how we should prepare for those interviews. And then also just a clarification question. When we submit on like by this Friday, and then we get the feedback, like we submit that on the Fulbright website, but we have access eventually to our application again once we get feedback from BC.
I can jump in. My interview, I tried to prepare because I was nervous, like probably everyone was. But they give you a few curveballs. Like they asked me how I would explain race tensions in America. And that's just obviously a delicate, sensitive question. And they also, it was Armenian was my country, my language. So I had been learning Armenian for a couple months. And I thought maybe they would ask me to have a conversation like, how are you? What's your name? How many brothers do you have? Or something. But they brought an Armenian professor from the English department, and he pulled out this like literature, this long poem in Armenian written in the 1800s, and asked me to read it out loud and translate it. And I was like, okay. And I got through it. Like not fluidly, you know, not like beautiful, but I could read it slowly and slowly translate it. And I was really nervous, like, oh, what, such a disappointment. I can't do this poetry justice. But they were, like I think Bjorn said, looking to say something true about you. Like they want to get you the Fulbright. and they want to be able to write in the recommendation, we pulled out this Armenian literature and she was able to read it, or something like that, or could answer questions in Italian. So they're on your side, but at the same time they'll be rigorous. So just prepare some well thought out answers to that sort of question.
And for, I know some countries, including the one I applied to, had a separate, I had Professor Christensen who was on the panel, and he asked me a few questions in Russian, but, you know, like everyone is saying, they were fairly nice and approachable questions in Russian. But then I had a second interview with Marina Bezrukova, who's the liaison for Fulbright in Russia, and so she's Russian, and you have a separate interview with that individual, which is a lot more intense, and the only purpose of it is to suss out your language ability. So that one, you know, I went to my Russian professor, and I had her, you know, basically kind of do some out of the classroom drills for me to make sure that my case endings were right and that I was ready for that, because that's the whole point of that second language interview.
For the BC interview, like, again, mine was like a bazillion years ago, so I barely remember it. But like, now that you guys are talking about it, I'm remembering it more. And y'all are BC students, so if you say like, don't freak out about it too much, like, that's like, just nobody's gonna believe that. But you know, you all have been at BC 3 years, 4 years, like, you know that like the faculty there is like amazing. You know, they want to help you. And if your interview's in a different language, like I know for German, Professor Christensen was on mine, but then we had 2 German professors, and like Professor Resler's like making these jokes with me in German, and Professor Christensen has no idea what we're saying, and he's just sitting there, and then like Resler's like cracking up, you know, and so then they can say like, hey, she can like speak colloquially, you know, she can like joke around. And so, you know, if you sit there and you're like so nervous, it's like they don't have, you want to show that like you can be gregarious, you can like be in a situation and make yourself uncomfortable. So it's better to mess up, but show that like you are like able to talk with, you know, adult professors and put yourself in uncomfortable situations than to sit there and be like, like, because you're so this is for people speaking other languages, but because you're so nervous to speak the language. And, you know, so just like dive into it, and, you know, they're going to have good things to say.
And yes, Stephanie, my memory of turning it in was that you do press the internet submit button, and then, but it kind of only stays within BC, and the BC Fulbright peeps can unlock it again for you, and then you resubmit it online officially. So it's through the website both times, and they are sort of keeping it the first time and then releasing it the second time.
Okay, so I'm kind of on the other tab trying to figure out how to save a chat, because you guys are saying great things there and I don't have the time to be reading all of this. But worst case scenario, I'll just copy all of it and then put it in a Google Doc and organize it. But if anyone knows how, that'd be great if you could just like say that in the chat as well.
I think if you press the 3 dots, like in the chat at the bottom, press the 3 dots and then it's save chat.
Yeah, I just have a Chromebook, so it's like I'm missing all these Zoom features. Like I can't change my background either.
I'll save it and I can just send it to you.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you. Once everyone gets all their comments in, but I'm loving the talk in the chat. So the interview, that's great. That's something that's been racking my nerves as well as everyone else. So thank you guys for speaking about that. Another question that I had that I was curious about is, when you're talking about, when you're trying to seem confident in your teaching abilities, you might have a tendency to like start curriculum planning. Like when I, like in the classroom, I hope to do singing activities and storytelling and play music, but you are working as a teaching assistant and not a teacher. So what is that line between like curriculum planning, but not overstepping your boundaries and seeming like you're going to take over the classroom? Does that make sense?
Are you
And also,
asking in terms of actually being in the classroom or how you want to present it on your application?
so kind of both. I'm asking in terms of the application for one, but then also in terms of what is that actually like when you're there? If everyone has different, like how much control do you have? I've heard like some people get an old outdated textbook thrown at them and that's what they have to teach, while other people are just told to stand in front of the classroom and whatever you bring to the table is what you do. So I'm really interested to hear, how should I talk about this in my application, respecting that I'm a teacher, teaching assistant, and then also like what is it in real life?
I found that what I wrote in the application was completely divorced from what the school asked me to do. I was given like these really ancient English novellas to teach the students, and that was what I did. It was really boring, but in my essay, obviously, I think it's better for the American readers if you have creative ideas and if you're showing that you're really invested in teaching and not just getting paid to live in a different country. So I don't think you can really overstep the boundaries. Whether you're actually to be able to implement any of your ideas is a different story.
Yeah, I second that. I think in your application, I would put down as many exciting, fun ideas as you can, because again, it'll show the readers of your app in the US, and then when it gets sent to the host country, hopefully, that like you're ready to do this and you're going to be proactive and like have great ideas. But then my experience, I was going to say this when we were talking about challenges, but I was working with 8 different teachers at 3 different schools in my town. So it was like really, really hard to suss out like my relationship with each of them, their expectations for me, how much they wanted me to like totally take over, or they wanted me to like really be an assistant. And it was different with each one. And it took me like the first 2 months to figure that out. And then like things were much better there on out. Like some classes, they were reading Hamlet, and I would come up with like really fun speaking activities about, I don't know, like parent-children relationships, and if they believed in ghosts, and just like totally random stuff that either had to do with the theme or the content, and like really fun activities. But then other classes, I don't know, it's really different. And so yeah, in your app, put all your great ideas, but when you get there, it'll be kind of like a negotiation with all the teachers you work with, what they want from you and what you can kind of advocate for yourself to be able to.
Thank you guys so much for touching on that. So does anyone other than me have any more questions? Because we are over time, and if you guys have them, speak now or forever hold your peace.
I don't have a question, but I do have one quick thing I want to say.
Okay.
I also had applied for a Fulbright when I was a senior, and for a master's program in Northern Ireland, and I was the alternate and didn't end up going. But I like still kept Fulbright kind of in the back of my mind and knew that I wanted to still reapply at some time, and so like figured out what grant would be a good idea and when would be a good time. But so for all of you kind of thinking about applying, like if you're really committed to Fulbright and you love the program as much as I did, if it like doesn't work out the first time, I think there's always another chance. One of the other ETAs in Italy with me had worked in study abroad for like 10 years, was 30, and was like, I want to go now, I want to do something. And so just another thing is that like, I really, best of luck, and it's a great time to be applying, and it's exciting. And I know there's so much unknown right now, but like if it doesn't work out the first time, there's always another time to try. And it's been great to be a part of the Fulbright network and the Fulbright program. And so I'm excited for all of you to apply now, but there's like always a second chance if it doesn't go the first time. And I like committed to reapplying at some point, and I'm really glad I did.
Thank you. That's actually great advice, and leading into one of the last questions I had before we wrapped it up. So there is that long waiting period in between when you apply and when you hear back. And during that time, it's kind of expected that you find a job or something. Because what if you don't get it, you know? So can you guys just touch on, did you apply to grad school? Did you apply to that like finance job you've been avoiding your whole life? What did you do when you were waiting that decision or awaiting that acceptance?
I can speak on that a little bit because mine didn't start until January. So I had a long time. I would really recommend getting some experience of, you know what you want to do in this program. That's so exciting. And so just keep working towards what you're passionate about. If you are waiting to hear back about the application, it's not the end of the world if you don't get this. There are so many other opportunities and ways that you can experience something really, really similar. If you want to look into PF, Princeton in Africa, or Princeton in Asia, they have all of these different programs where it's similar, it's a year, and you work with an NGO. So there are different ways that you can accomplish this same idea. And I keep doing things because you're passionate about them. You'll be happier, you'll be more successful, not because like Fulbright has some kind of name to it that you've always wanted to grasp or put on your resume. I think such a cliche answer, but keep doing what you like and keep trying new things and putting yourself out there. And if you do have a long period of time before you leave for your grant, get an internship, join a campaign. There's so many things. Don't just be like, oh, I'm gonna head back and do something. That's all.
And I want to add really quickly, being from the class of 2020 and really experiencing the uncertainty of graduation ending early and job prospects being pretty hard. I know BC has this kind of stigma about being the top of the top and making sure you have that job and everything else. I can tell you, as someone who's been bumming around waiting for Fulbright to start for a while and waited till May to find out, I panicked about that and then realized it was not the end of the world. I found a lot of time for self-reflection. I found a lot of time for self-growth in this period. And I know things may continue to be uncertain, so just know that it's okay to take that time to yourself and you don't need to get that job necessarily right away.
I'll also say, just having just worked at IIE, they are very much figuring this out just as much as we all are. So they are working as hard as they can to make these opportunities happen. It's not like anyone's trying to prevent you from going, but it's all a matter of coordinating with the host country. I will also say that somebody mentioned this earlier. I think it was Eleanor. Sometimes the host country will have a commission, which is like an independent body that supervises the Fulbrighters in that country. If there isn't a commission, it's supervised by the U.S. Embassy / commissions in that country.
Okay, thank you guys. I'm sensing that we're wrapping up, which is great because can go eat dinner, but I'm also very thankful for having you guys here today. And this has been so exciting to put together. Hearing from you is really going to make a difference in a lot of students' applications. And I'm so thankful that so many people showed up. I thought only 5 alum were coming. You guys really surprised me with 10, even more than that at some point. So thank you so much. I or other students, if you are okay with us reaching out to you individually based off what we heard you say today, just pop your email in that chat, and whenever it gets downloaded and put in a Google Doc, I'm gonna send that out to anyone who wants it, but specifically undergrads, unless you guys wanna see your own comments again. Just reach out to me and I'll get them to you. Or Natasha, she'll have them as well. I also wanna, like I said a million times already, thank you so much for coming. You guys have some of the coolest experiences under your belt. I know when I put you in a panel like this, it seems like typical or common, but I really want to emphasize for like BC students, like this is not, they are remarkable, hardworking, unique. Like this is a great accomplishment, and I'm really lucky to have spoken to all of you guys. So thank you for joining me tonight. And yeah, you guys can all click out and have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, Brianna.